Okay, so
Okay.
welcome back to ITHA Talk series, where we interview different professionals and students in the healthcare field about their path and careers. And the purpose of this talk is to help students factor in the different paths before making the decision to commit. And we also hope to start a conversation about the importance of interprofessionalism within healthcare. My name is Dina.
My name is Harneet, and our guest today is Dr. Tsang, who is a professor at the University of Ottawa's Department of Obstetrics and Gynaecology, Cellular and Molecular Medicine, and the Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences. He is also a senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, and he works as an ovarian biologist. Welcome, Dr. Tsang. It's so wonderful to have you here with us.
So happy to be a part of your conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If it's okay with you, we can jump right into the questions and get on with it. So the first thing we wanted to ask you is if you could walk us through what an ovarian biologist does and give us more insight into this career as you have that experience.
Well, I think the term ovarian biologist is one who study the physiology or biological system of the ovary. And but having said that, it's not just biology alone. And I think it is important to recognize the impact on reproduction and ovarian pathology as it relates to infertility and ovarian cancer. So having said that, one should be cognizant of the fact that to achieve our goal and to be successful, one has to be working with a multidisciplinary team. And in fact, the students that I train or learn with me will get that exposure in understanding what is interdisciplinary as opposed to multidisciplinary research.
Okay. You mentioned that there's a difference between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. Do you mind if you could just extend on that a little bit and explain the difference for us?
I think it is a scale that we all go through in our career development. First, we have someone who's working as a monodisciplinary or unidisciplinary. You just focus on, like in this case, ovarian biology. And then as the person progresses or involved in multidisciplinary research, that means he uses technical expertise, but also interact with other people who from different disciplines. So the trainee do not necessarily get the full picture as one would from a interdisciplinary research.
For sure.
Yeah. So jumping right into the next question, how did you know that research was the path for you as opposed to other fields of healthcare? And what was your journey like?
Well, I think I have to give credit to my professor at my undergraduate training, who offered me the opportunity to be involved in a research project during the summer, where I learned not just skill, but also learn to ask questions. And that was, and at that time, I don't know research is my career path. It is really through that process, through my undergraduate, that I developed the interest and developed the habit and developed the curiosity and the inquisitive mind that is needed for developing a strong research career path. So I enjoy what I'm doing. I find it stimulating, but also challenging at times because things don't work out exactly what you think it would be. But I remain in research, but my topic of research changed over the years as I mature intellectually as well as a person, and as the environment around me also changes, you know.
But I'm hoping we can switch gears for a second and talk more about the work you've done as a professor. So we know that you're an emeritus professor of obstetrics and gynecology at Ottawa University. And we just wanted to know what some of your favorite classes to have taught were and why you believe so.
Well, I think the way we look at teaching is no longer teaching. Our goal is to facilitate learning. My favorite time I have with small group, with graduate student learning, with medical students, in problem-based learning, in tutorials. Also, I do not do much didactic teacher in front of a class of, let's say, 100 students or so. I enjoy more so in small group, like 8 to 10 type of thing, where you can actually see individual participation and how they respond and learn from the experience. Our goal as a professor is to facilitate learning, help them to develop a lifetime learning skill, self-learning skills, because the fact of the matter is your students are not going to be with you all the time. They will move on and they will do their own learning. And our field is changing so rapidly, and that many of them will go online, go to the literature to learn from there than from us.
And switching gears into back to your lab, could you talk to us about the importance of diversity and having individuals from different cultures and backgrounds in your lab?
I think this is very important as you look around us. Mm-hmm. I always ask the question, is my laboratory representative the microcosm mm-hmm. or the community around us? Is my lab a microcosm of the community? Mm-hmm. So, and research has no borders. And I think we all recognize that now, and that research progress much better with collaboration, not just next door, but also international partnership. Much of my aspect of my research relates to international development, international research and academic partnership with Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Germany, of course, United States and Canada too. And we accept each other as we are. And this is very important. Each person brings its own value to the group. Mm-hmm. And one size doesn't fit all.
So I think we can move on to the next question. So I mentioned this in our emails that we exchanged back and forth, but in our preliminary meeting, you had mentioned that you value the training of the mind over the training of the skills. And again, it's just something that stuck with me. I think it's a great thing to have said. And I was just wondering if you could talk more on that now so even the audience could learn about your perspective on it.
Sure, delighted to do that. I think to be truthful, every trainees go through different time of training with different people, under different environment and situation. Mm-hmm. And the question of interest, whether it's academic or research and so on, would be very different. So what I learned 10 years ago, technically, may not necessarily be applicable now or 8 years ago or 5 years ago. But if you train the mind to be able to ask the right question, that is better because that will never leave anybody. It's a long-term investment. And that learning a skill could be anywhere, anytime, as long as you are collaborating with people. You go to the next lab, you go to another floor above, you can get people to teach you according to the project, according to the problems you are addressing. Because you might, for instance, learn how to use PCR to look at RNA, okay, content, all right. But 2 years later in another project, you might never use that technique again. You might use a Western blot to look at certain things, certain proteins, but you might not be using that 5 years later. Okay, so, but training of the mind is more important because your inquisitivity will be there all the time, whether you're working on a lung project or ovarian project, or you're working on an epidemiological project that is totally not related to lab research. So I think that's also very important. Most people want to develop that training of the mind because they want to advance. And we want our students to advance in an area so that they can make their own decision, not somebody making a decision for them. All right. In other words, if one wants to be a technologist, you want to learn as many skills as you want. But if you want to run a lab and be an independent researcher and be able to call the shots and say, this is very important, this is very important, or that question is, why is it so important today? And then training of the mind is more important, and it's more stimulating too.
What advice would you give a student who's looking to pursue a career similar to yours?
Every individual is different, and every individual aspirations are different. And the background of that individual are also maybe different. So it's very hard to say, you should do this, you should not do that. I would never tell them this way. For somebody who's still exploring, who doesn't know, and this is quite common for undergraduate students who are going into graduate study, or even graduate students who are looking at postdoctoral training. Talk to as many professors, seek advice and guidance from them. Explore what area. Seek out where your passion is. Let your passion drive you, but also be realistic.
Wonderful advice, Dr. Tsang. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It has been very insightful, and we have definitely learned a lot from you. And I'm sure when our audience views this, then they will also learn a lot from you. We'd also like to thank the audience for tuning in to another episode of IPHA Talks. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we definitely did. And as always, you can find us at uOttawa IPHA on our social platforms. Have a great week. Thank you so much once again.
Nice talking.